Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, a review of the new live Iron Maiden album, Knights of the Dead, Legacy of the Beast, live in Mexico City. Now, Iron Maiden releases a live album after pretty much every major tour at this point. So it's a little hard to get super excited for a new Iron Maiden live record at this point. I remember back when I was first getting into music, back in the 80s, when a band released a live album, it was really a special thing. Like when Live After Death came out, that was a really big deal. Iron Maiden was at the peak of their powers at that point. And it was, they had Made in Japan that they had put out before that, but that wasn't widely available. So Live After Death was really the first big live album that anybody could get. And now, with pretty much a lot of bands now, because of the nature of, I guess, physical sales being down and things being more digital and streaming, bands release a lot more live albums, and a lot of the specialness of a live album for me has been taken away. It's just not that special anymore. So honestly, when I first heard that Iron Maiden was having this live album was coming out, I didn't really get that excited about it. But I was pleasantly surprised when I listened to it. There's some things that I do like about it. I do have some issues with it. So the album was produced by Steve Harris and Tony Newton. Tony Newton is a name that's new to me. I didn't do any research on him. Typically, Iron Maiden, the last so many studio records, have been working with Kevin Shirley. Unfortunately, the production on this record, it doesn't really work for me. There's a couple of things going on. It's very lacking in bass, and not the instrument, the bass, as in the instrument that Steve Harris plays. Of course, you can hear the bass guitar. This is Iron Maiden. But man, just bass frequency. The whole recording is very bright. It's strange. The first time I listened to it, I had just gotten done listening to a couple songs from the new AC/DC album Power Up, which I've done a review on. And in my review of Power Up, I mentioned how great the bass guitar sounds on that recording and how there's a lot. The whole recording is very warm, lots of low end, bass the frequency and bass the instrument. So I was listening to a couple songs of the new AC/DC and I said, I'm going to listen to that new live Iron Maiden. And when I started listening to it, I actually thought that the headphones on for my phone had maybe partially come out or something, because it was so trebly sounding, it was so metallic sounding that I thought there was something wrong. Especially coming from the AC/DC record, it just made it sound even more bright and trebly. And today I was listening to it. I don't have a physical copy of it yet. I was streaming it through my Amazon Music HD, which this album is available on Ultra HD, which is 24-bit, 96 kilohertz, which is better than CD quality. And I was streaming it through my stereo, and man, it just sounds like it's only coming out of the tweeters on my speakers. So that's a real negative for me. It's also a little bit compressed, so it's a little bit harsh on the ears. It doesn't have a very warm sound to it. So that was kind of disappointing. You can't hear the instruments. One thing that I did like, one problem that I have with Iron Maiden in the 3 guitar setup is that, especially on the live albums that they put out, in a live setting, a lot of times they put the 3rd guitar in the middle. So it just sounds like there's guitar in left, middle, right speakers. And in the early days, if you go back to when Maiden was a 2-guitar band, it was always like, you listen to Live After Death, there's one guitar heavy in the one speaker. I believe Adrian Smith was in the right and Dave Murray in the left. I could be not remember that correctly. Steve Harris's bass right in the middle, and it made for a cleaner sound. And on this last so many Iron Maiden recordings, I don't know, it always seems too cluttered to me. But on this one, they actually pan the guitars so that they're more in the left and the right speaker, and the bass is sort of in the middle. When the guitar solos come around, the solos are in the middle. But so it makes it a little easier hearing the guitars that way for me personally in this sort of live setting. For the performances, I think that everybody sounds great. I saw this tour and I thought the band sounded fantastic. I mean, Bruce, considering everything he's gone through with the cancer and everything, he sounds amazing. He's still hitting the high notes. Yeah, is it as effortless as back in the 80s when he was in his prime? Of course not, but he's still hitting the notes and there's still a lot of power to them. So I think that Bruce sounds, in a lot of ways, really, really good on this. There are times where it seems like it's a little hard to, like the words are a little bit sort of garbled together. It's a little hard to pick out what he's saying. But again, you know, he's running around on stage. We all know what a great performer Bruce is. And you know what, in this day and age, everybody complains that live albums have too much, they're just redone in the studio. People complain about that. And then when a live recording is actually live, which is what this sounds like, it doesn't sound like Bruce overdubbed anything, then people complain, oh, he doesn't sound, I don't know, Bruce doesn't sound that great. You know, and again, for me, does he sound like he did in his prime? Of course not. But for at his age, for as athletic as Bruce is on stage, I think that he sounds really good, and I think it's really. I remember seeing him live and being blown away with how good he sounded live, and so I think here he sounds really good also. The band sounds good. One interesting thing about the 3 guitar setup, when they play stuff from the earlier catalog that was originally only 2 guitars, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And for the most part, though, I think that it works with the 3 guitars. I like when all 3 of them are sort of playing like harmony lines together. I think that that's really neat. I also think it's kind of cool. I'm assuming it's Yannick that's doing this. There's things like, if you listen to like the Trooper, for instance, they're playing the riff and then there's little fills, little dive bomb things, little bend notes and stuff like that aren't in the original recording. I'm assuming that that's Yannick and that the other guys are playing their original parts. So it's kind of interesting to hear these little guitar fills in some of these songs. So that's cool. The bass sounds pretty good, I guess. I mean, it's there in the mix. I wish that there was more heft to the overall low end. The bass itself, I wish had a little bit more bass sound to sort of fill out the sound, but I already talked about that. Nico McBrain, the drums sound good on this, and Nico's is pretty tight and in the pocket. One problem I've had with some of the past live Maiden recordings is sometimes Nico can just play everything too fast. He does his drum fills. It sounds like he rushes sometimes through some of his drum fills, but he sounds really locked in here. The whole band in general sounds really locked in. So from that perspective, it's good. And again, I saw this tour, and it sounds like what I remember from seeing the show. Lots of energy, really tight. And the other good thing about this is that there's enough different songs on here to make it worth listening to. One problem with them releasing so many live albums is that you're hearing, how many times can you hear Hallowed Be Thy Name live? I mean, when I'm there in concert, yeah, I love it. But on a recording, how many live recordings of Hallowed Be Thy Name do we need? And there is some of that on here. You've got Fear of the Dark, Hallowed Be Thy Name, Run to the Hills, Number of the Beast, the song Iron Maiden, just to name a few. And some of those are like, we have so many other live versions of those. But there's a bunch of songs on here that they haven't done very often or haven't done in a really long time. Like, for instance, Flight of Icarus. That's a very welcome return. I think the last time last live album to have Flight of Icarus on it was Live After Death. Where Eagles Dare, that's a really cool one that they don't play live a lot. Some stuff from the Blaze era, Klansman and Sign of the Cross. I think that's really cool that Bruce sings those songs. Revelations is one they haven't done in a while. For the Greater Good of God, From a Matter of Life and Death. That's a really cool one. I'm not sure if that's on any of the other live albums, so that's really neat. The Evil That Men Do. So overall, there's 17 songs. You know, the set list is pretty good. I really wish at this point that maybe Iron Maiden would maybe go and do a tour where they only play deep cuts. This is a topic that I might get into in another video, where I kind of wish that some of these legacy bands will go out and do special shows. Maybe not an entire lengthy tour, but do some special shows where maybe they set up for 3 nights at some place like Radio City in New York, and they say, you know what, this is for the diehard fans. It's not going to be a big stage setup. We're going to play 2 sets or maybe 1 long set. We're going to be playing mostly all deep cuts. You're not going to hear Wrathchild or Run to the Hills. This is for the hardcore fans, and maybe even have a set list that varies greatly from night to night. I think that would be really exciting. And wouldn't it be awesome to have a live Iron Maiden album with stuff that they've never, that are on none of the other live albums? I mean, how cool would that be? A live album filled with deep cuts. And I get it. Like, believe me, I totally understand. There's a certain percentage of the crowd that's there to only hear Run to the Hills and the stuff that they recognize. So I do understand that. And I think that they strike a nice balance here. There's enough deep cut stuff like Klansman and Sign of the Cross for the more dedicated fans. And then there's the quote, hits for the more casual fans like Number of the Beast, DMT, people that are only familiar with them from their videos and stuff. There's those songs on here also. So overall, yeah, I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. Did it blow my mind? No. It's a good tour document. It is cool, I guess, that Iron Maiden at this point pretty much documents every tour with a live album. Points lost for the mix. It's bordering on distracting for me, the lack of low end. But again, it's fun. It's the band sounds great at this point. Iron Maiden this far into their career, the fact that they can get up and sound as great as they do live is really a testament to what a fantastic band that they are. I mean, they still sound as great today. Play with as much energy today as they have at any point in their career. So you got to give them props and respect for that. So it's a fun record. I like it. How many times am I going to come back and listen to it? I don't know. I'm not really sure. I mean, right now I'm sort of into it, so I've been listening to it a lot. What I've been doing is I've been building a playlist on my Amazon Music account of Iron Maiden live, but I'm not repeating any songs. So there's only one version of Number of the Beast on there. There's only one version of Hallowed Be Thy Name. So honestly, when I was listening to this, I'll be honest, I listened to Number of the Beast like once, and then the other times I listened to it, I just sort of skipped over, and I spent most of my time listening to some of the songs I haven't heard them play live a lot, like Flight of Icarus and Klansman and Sign of the Cross and stuff like that. So, all right. So let me know what you guys think. Have you heard this? Do you get excited for a live Iron Maiden album at this stage in their career? If you heard it, what did you think? What did you think of the mix? Let me know. What did you think of the song selection? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you again, stay heavy, stay metal.